There are gods people pray to for power, gods of war, gods of storms, gods who bring victory, wealth, or protection, and then there are gods people hope never to meet. Anubis was one of them, not because he was evil, not because he hunted the living, but because meeting him meant one thing: your life was over. In the ancient world, death was not seen as an ending, it was a passage, a journey into something unknown, and every journey needs a guide. That guide was Anubis. He stood at the edge between worlds, between life and death, between what was known and what came after, and unlike many gods, Anubis did not rule with chaos or emotion. He was calm, silent, watching. The Egyptians imagined him with the head of a jackal, an animal often seen near tombs and burial grounds. To most people, that image would feel terrifying, but to them, it meant protection, because tombs were sacred, the dead were sacred, and someone had to guard them, someone had to ensure that the journey after death remained untouched. That was Anubis. He watched over the dead, protected bodies during mummification, guided souls through the darkness of the underworld. But that was not the part people feared most. What they feared was judgment, because after death, every soul would face something unavoidable, truth, and Anubis was the one who led them there. To a place beyond the world of the living, a hall of silence, a hall where no lies mattered anymore, only the weight of your heart. This was the moment every person feared, not death itself, but what came after it, because according to the ancient Egyptians, the heart carried everything, every lie, every act of cruelty, every betrayal, every choice. Nothing disappeared, nothing was forgotten, and in the center of that hall stood a scale. On one side, your heart, on the other, a feather, the feather of truth, of balance, of justice, and Anubis was the one who watched the scale, not with anger, not with mercy, but with absolute calm, because his role was not to punish. It was to reveal the truth, and the truth cannot be escaped. This is what made Anubis different from other gods. He did not chase power, he did not seek worship, he simply waited for everyone, kings, warriors, priests, ordinary people. In the end, all of them would stand before him, and that is what makes death terrifying, not because it comes suddenly, but because deep down, everyone knows it is waiting, silently, patiently, somewhere in the dark, and one day, you will hear your name called too. Death was never the end. That was the first thing every soul realized. The moment life disappeared, consciousness remained, and that is where the fear truly began. Because the dead did not simply vanish into darkness, they awakened somewhere else, a place beyond the world of the living, cold, silent, endless. The ancient Egyptians called it the Duat. Duat, a realm filled with shadows, gates, strange beings, and paths no living person could fully understand. It was not heaven, it was not punishment, it was a passage, and every soul entering it understood one thing immediately: there was no turning back. Some wandered in fear, some cried out for the lives they had lost, others tried to deny what had happened to them, but none of it mattered, because eventually, every path led to the same place, the Hall of Judgment, and waiting there was Anubis, not moving, not speaking, only watching. There are many ways people imagine fear: violence, pain, darkness, but true fear is quieter than that. True fear is standing before something that already knows the truth about you. That is what souls felt when they saw Anubis, because nothing could be hidden there. Not status, not wealth, not power. The pharaoh stood beside the farmer, the warrior beside the thief, and all of them became equal. For the first time in their existence, this was not judgment based on titles, it was judgment based on truth, and truth is merciless. At the center of the hall stood the scales, ancient, perfectly still. On one side, Anubis placed the heart of the dead, not symbolic. To the Egyptians, the heart was the true self, the place where every action, every intention, every lie remained forever. On the other side, the feather of Mot, the symbol of balance, of truth, of order. And then, the weighing began. No one spoke, no one needed to, because in that moment, every soul already understood what was happening. If the heart remained light, the soul could continue. If it became heavy, something else waited, and that was the part people feared most. Not Anubis, but what stood nearby, watching, hungry. Amit, a creature formed from the most feared predators of the ancient world. part lion, part crocodile, part hippopotamus. Not a monster of chaos, a monster of consequence. If the scales revealed corruption, it would consume the soul completely. Not torture, not suffering. Something worse, erasure, to disappear forever, to become nothing. This was the horror hidden behind Egyptian beliefs about death. Not pain, not fire, but the possibility that your existence meant nothing in the end. And through all of it, Anubis remained silent, because he was not there to decide your fate, only to reveal it. That is what made him terrifying. He did not punish the guilty, he showed them what they truly were, and sometimes, that is far more frightening. Most people fear death because it is unknown, but the ancient Egyptians feared something deeper, being judged, because death is frightening. But truth can be worse. Every soul that entered the hall of judgment carried hope. Even the guilty, even those who spent their lives lying, hurting others, believing they would never face consequences, because while people are alive, they learn how to hide. They hide behind power, behind status, behind excuses. They convince others. Sometimes, they even convince themselves. But in the presence of Anubis, none of that mattered anymore, because Anubis did not listen to words. He weighed truth itself, and truth cannot be manipulated forever. This is what made the hall terrifying, not because souls suffered there, but because for the first time, they were seen completely. No masks, no lies, no escape. Imagine standing in absolute silence, knowing that every choice you ever made is about to be revealed. Every betrayal, every selfish act, every moment you thought no one would remember, and realizing that something did remember, your heart. The Egyptians believed the heart carried everything, not memory alone, but morality, the evidence of who you truly were, which means the real trial began long before death. It began while you were alive. Every action added weight, every lie became heavier, and most people never noticed it happening. That is what makes this story powerful even now, because the fear behind it is universal, the fear that one day, you will have to face yourself honestly, not the version others see, the real one. And for many souls, that moment was unbearable. Some prayed, some begged, some denied what the scales revealed, but the scales did not care. Truth does not change because someone fears it. This is why Anubis remained calm, because he understood something humans struggle to accept. Judgment is not cruelty. It is consequence, and consequences exist whether people believe in them or not. Beside the scale stood Ammit, waiting, still, patient, because she did not hunt, she did not choose, she only consumed what the scales exposed, and that made her terrifying in a different way, because monsters are easier to understand when they attack randomly, but Ammit was not random. She appeared only when the truth became too heavy to survive. This is what separated Egyptian mythology from many others. The greatest fear was not death. It was deserving your fate, and in the center of it all, Anubis continued watching. Silent, motionless. As soul after soul stepped forward, knowing that eventually, everyone reaches the scales, even those who believe they never will. In the end, every path becomes the same. Kings lose their crowns, warriors lose their weapons, the powerful lose the illusion of control, and all that remains is truth. That is why Anubis was feared for thousands of years, not because he brought death, but because he waited after it, patiently, silently, watching every soul approach the scales, one by one. There's something deeply unsettling about a god who does not need to threaten anyone. Anubis never needed armies. He never demanded worship through fear, because fear already existed inside people. He simply stood where that fear became real, and maybe that is why his image survived for so long. Even now, thousands of years later, people still recognize him instantly. The black jackal, the glowing eyes, the figure standing beside the dead, because symbols like that do not survive by accident. They survive because they represent something timeless. The fear of being judged honestly. Modern people often believe ancient myths were simple stories, primitive attempts to explain death. But stories survive when they contain something human. And this story does, because deep down, most people are not afraid of dying. They are afraid of what their life meant. Afraid that when everything is stripped away, there may be nothing left to hide behind. No image, no reputation, no distractions, only themselves. That is the real meaning behind the scales. Not punishment, reflection. The idea that every action matters, that every choice leaves something behind, even when no one else sees it. And whether people admit it or not, that idea still exists today. Not in temples, not in pyramids, but in the quiet moments when people question themselves, when they wonder if they did the right thing, when they think about regret, about guilt, about consequence. That is why Anubis still feels powerful, because he represents something that never disappeared. The certainty that one day, everyone faces truth, and truth does not care who you are. In ancient Egypt, people prepared for death their entire lives. Tombs, rituals, prayers, all created for one purpose: to survive what came after. But perhaps the most terrifying part of all this is that no ritual guaranteed success, because in the end, the scales decided. Not emotion, not excuses, not power, only truth. And standing beside those scales was Anubis, still silent, still watching, as he always would be, waiting for the next soul to arrive.